Mm.
Welcome to another episode of my Wake Up Call. This is the podcast where I get to know people a little, or in this case, a lot. And I not only want to find out more about them, I want to share them with the world. Because I am blessed to say that out of 550 guests, and maybe we screen them, all my guests are up to all good. And they're waging a battle against some of the bad actors in the world who are up to no good. And we're going to keep doing this till death do us part. So let me tell you about my good friends, and they're going to be a treat for me and a treat for all of you. And again, my guest today, it's again one of those duos that we do occasionally. My guests today are Scott Osman and Jacquelyn Lane, and they're the co-authors, along with Marshall Goldsmith, of the great new book, Becoming Coachable, Unleashing the Power of Executive Coaching to Transform Your Leadership. Let me tell you a little bit about each of them, and then you, our listeners, know I'm going to dive into their childhoods, and they're going to talk about honoring their parents or doing the opposite of the parents, and we'll find out, or maybe a mixture of both. Anyway, Scott's the founder and CEO of the 100 Coaches Agency and co-designer, along with Jacquelyn, of their proprietary curation process and the company's relationship first philosophy. I think we need to tighten that sentence in the future. Anyway, in his role as CEO, he establishes the vision for the company, leads partnerships and business development, and serves as a leading light of the 100 Coaches community. That comes naturally to him because he's an amazing photographer. And he co-founded that with Marshall in 2016. And he's also the co-founder of Methods by 100 Coaches, which is an online learning platform. Now, Jacquelyn Lane, she's the president of the 100 Coaches Agency. And along with Scott, it's co-designer. And she's been with the agency since its founding. And she is a critical pillar of the 100 Coaches community. She comes to the world of executive coaching through her previous roles in the energy industry. And she has a lifelong commitment to improving the lives of all people by elevating the quality of leadership. And boy, that is an idea whose time has come, and we need the world to pay attention to it. So I'm going to start with ladies first. So Jacquelyn, this is new to you, but not our listeners or viewers. What matters most to you? So you can put that in the back of your mind and share some childhood influences. You know, what did you notice as a child? What spoke out to you? And then I'm going to go to Scott, and then we're going to go to wake up calls for each of you that have landed you in becoming coachable and why you're both so passionate about it. So, Jacquelyn, I wrote a book called Just Listen, so I'm now going to shut up.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for having us today. It's a real pleasure to be here. I can't wait for how this conversation is going to unfold. I love this question, starting at the very beginning, right? Talking about childhood influences, the things that really come to mind immediately for me are just this, the things that we get praised for, right? You know, everyone notices and remembers what they most get praised for. And I was kind of an awkward kid, not particularly athletic or cool in any way, but there was one thing I was good at, and that was school. So I got, praised for being book smart and reading a lot and some of those things. And, combines with my parents. My dad's a surgeon. And for him, I remember we would come home from school, my sisters and I would come home and show him all of our grades and tests. And he would look at 95%. Do you think that's good? And, I was like, I got the high score in the class. And he said, well, 95% is not good enough. Because 95% could cost someone their life. That's the world of work I come from. He said, you need to figure out why you didn't get 100%. And you need to get 100% next time. And I think that
how did you that may have motivated you. It may have also created a reason for therapy later on. But how did you react to 95 being the best in the class. And understandably, if he's a surgeon, 95% could cost someone their life. But what was your reaction to 95% being great for the world, but you could do better coming from him?
Yeah, I think it resulted in this this perfectionist view to say, maybe that's good enough for other people, but it's not good enough for me. I need to hold myself to a higher standard. And it became this like achievement at all costs mentality that really permeated the rest of my, until we'll talk, I'm sure, about this, but my wake up call came for me in college. And that was the moment where I realized that I was stepping over and pushing down other people to doing anything I could to climb. And I think a lot of people, unfortunately, fall into that trap and think that's where they find meaning in life. But it's hard to see through sometimes and to climb out of until we have, as you say, Mark, those wake up moments.
So I want to go to Scott, but I jump on certain phrases. You realized you were pushing down other people. So, which means, well, it looks like I was paying it forward from my dad.
Yeah, right. Those early influences are powerful.
And was that a negative realization about yourself? Like, gee, I seem to be making other people unhappy or making myself unpopular because of that approach. And maybe there's a different way or a better way.
Absolutely. That was, I think, the moment of realization was this seeing that I was going to be alone if I didn't think about the people around me. That, this need to succeed at all costs came at a cost that was perhaps a little too high. And that really, that's not true success. That true success is about bringing other people with us. And I think that's too part of this, this book, Becoming Coachable, is about realizing that I was not a coachable person. I saw failures as a major character flaw for myself. I didn't see them as learning opportunities. But if we can make that little switch in our minds and see failure as an opportunity to learn and to grow, an opportunity to help other people around us learn and grow, if we can be well and truly coachable, then we can live much better, more fulfilling lives.
So you kind of beat up on yourself the way your dad did.
Right.
And was there ever a, maybe not a come to Jesus, but come to daddy moment when you said, Dad, I love you, but there's a different way? I mean, was there a time when you were able to say, this may be necessary if you're a surgeon, but I'm not sure what it does to helping other people to be the best that they can be, or even being happy yourself? Did you have that conversation?
In our own way, yeah. Again, I think one of the most powerful things is just being happy, showing that I can be happy and fulfilled and successful, maybe not in his way, but in my own way. And I think that sometimes speaks louder than the words. And we've come to a really great friendship now and understanding of one another. And I see some of the transformation starting to happen even in him as he, lets go of that tight hold on some of these things that may actually be holding him back.
No, that's wonderful. So you just set a pretty high standard. So Scott, I want you to push yourself to be three-dimensional.
Yeah.
So
I
talk
would
about.
like to yield the rest of my time to Jacquelyn. I'll tell you. So I was actually incredibly fortunate to grow up with tremendous number of loving influences around me. And one of the most important ones was my grandfather, who had a men's clothing store. And I observed him really live what I now call a flourishing life, because people came into the store anxious to see him, excited to see him, because they knew that what he cared about was that they would leave the store feeling better about themselves. And he did that through, giving them the right suit and making them feel like they were well attended to. But he really inspired me from a very early age. And really, well, I'm talking, well, he died when I was 10. So I spent a lot of time with him when I was very young. And he really, I think in part because he died when I was 10, I really held sort of that life force of his as an inspiration, and really always felt that my role was to help people flourish and feel inspired. And I think I've carried that through my whole life, and certainly has led me to the 100 coaches and inspired becoming coachable.
Absolutely.
What was the impact of him dying when you were 10?
You know, I honestly am not quite sure, except to say that I think I internalized his values, and really in some way, unconscious way, maybe looking back, I attributed to this, but at the time I certainly didn't. Carrying forward the values that he had, definitely felt like a gift, not at all a burden to me. But I think I wanted to live the same qualities that he lived by. And a lot of his core traits are certainly my core traits. He was very curious. He was very creative. He loved to do things with his hands, and those I think all describe me. And of course, he wanted to see people flourish. And I think I've always felt that no matter what I'm doing, that's been the core driver of who I am.
Are there traits of his that you would like to emulate even further?
So, our good friend Aisha Bursell has this class, Design the Life You Love. And in that class, she has the hero exercise. And in the hero exercise, you pick somebody, if you don't know the exercise when you start, you pick somebody who you really think is a hero, and then you describe the characteristics of that person. And then she says, well, those are the characteristics that are really internal to you and that inspire you and that you live by. And I think all of the characteristics that I remember him for are the characteristics that I live by. All of them. I'm blessed with a very curious memory that remembers the positive qualities and experiences of people and my past, and seems to let go very quickly of negative impressions and negative events in the past. So in some sense, I have a very jaded memory, I think, in a positive way, of who he was. On the other hand, I would say, I think that's who he was. He was generous. He again, not only saw people in the best light, but really helped them achieve their best self. He was another thing that I really emulate with him. He was an early adopter of everything. Whatever new gadget, whatever new thing was coming out, he was one of the first people to use it and play with it and really enjoy the experience of the newness of it. And that's another quality that I really fully embody.
Are you in touch right now, as we're speaking about him, of kind of missing him? Or not?
No, I feel like he's present for me all the time.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So let's switch over to wake up calls. In the introduction, we got into a little of your background, and again, I'm going to go back and forth because I don't think you can both talk at the same time without it being confusing. So Jacquelyn, and I'll tell you, I've done these dual interviews, and what makes them really neat is when people dig down and they share something, and afterwards they say, I didn't know that about you. Mm-hmm. So have at it. Have at it.
Yeah. Mark, we spent a lot of time together, and we're both pretty good sharers. Oh, so I'm hoping that I find something new about Jacquelyn that I didn't know before.
Yeah. So where we left off, though, you had mentioned that you pivoted from, getting ahead at other people's expense and not being coachable. So share some wake up calls along the way and give us some examples that people can actually visualize so they're not abstractions, and then land us in becoming coachable from your point of view. And I'm going to do the same with Scott.
Perfect. Yeah. I think, again, this idea of achievement had just been building my entire life. Again, it like started for me very young. I want to say somewhere around like second or third grade. And that became this like major driving force. It was like, this is the thing I get all the praise and any attention for, nothing else really matters. And it was this idea of like, but it always, always, always never enough, never enough. You get to some goal and it doesn't quite feel as satisfying as you thought it would feel. And so you try again, maybe I'll just set a slightly bigger goal and I'll do it again. And you get there and it's also not quite as satisfying as you'd hoped it'd be. But it becomes this vicious cycle where you just keep going. And then I reached this breaking point in college at some point. I had either a dream or a vision. I'm not really sure if I was awake or asleep, to be honest with you. And in it, I had passed away. It was at the end of my life, and there I was, up in the clouds, watching on a giant TV screen floating in the sky, all these images of my life. And I could see that in all of them, I was run, going to do this, accomplishing that. And then, and all these things. And it was just this constant, like, striving energy over and over and over again in all of these images. And then the picture started zooming out a little bit at a time. And I could start to see some of the people that were in the periphery, some of the people that were around me that were really, one person who was really struggling with something, or someone who was really sad, or someone who clearly needed help, and I could have helped them, but I didn't even have the time to notice them. And I could just see, all of these images, I had so clearly missed the most important thing, which was all these people around me. And that was the moment. And I was there, at the very end of my life, well and truly alone. And I just remember like just waking up from that, or again, if I don't know if I was totally awake or asleep when this happened, just tears streaming down my face. And I said, I have gotten it all wrong. And that was the moment I decided I want to make a change. And, that very quickly on, I figured out that I really wanted to have friends for a lifetime. But I didn't know what that meant at that time. I'd hardly had friends in my life, to be honest, unless they needed answers for a test or something like that. But, I recommend to people to do this, but choose wisely, because the response to this is very strong. It's, approaching someone and saying, someone you already know who may already be a friend of some kind of depth, and saying to them, I really want to be a friend of yours forever. I want to figure out how we can have a friendship that spans decades, so that no matter what happens, that I'm not going anywhere, that I want to be here for you through thick and thin. I want to figure out how to have that kind of a friendship. What do you think? And that's a big promise. It's a big commitment. So, again, use it sparingly, but the response, especially at that time, I was expecting rejection, especially in large part because I'd not always been either available or the best person to be around. And the response was overwhelmingly forgiveness and acceptance and love. And that really started me on this journey that's now led to the 100 Coaches community, and being a aggregator of people, a community builder, someone who really tries to see and understand people, and recognizes that some of the most fulfilling success in life comes from helping other people accomplish their dreams, and supporting one another in that process. And, this goes to what Scott was saying earlier with the word flourishing. When we think about the word flourishing, what it really implies is an environment where everything flourishes together. You can't have one thing flourish at the expense of another. That's not flourishing. That's more like, what do they call it in biology? When there's one species that like predatory, or, a host and something that's a predator for that. And, this idea again of we all succeed together. And that's what I think we're really trying to create, not only at the 100 Coaches and 100 Coaches Agency, but with our book, Becoming Coachable, is to help people understand that their actions do have a really big impact on the world around them, especially if you're a leader.
Right. It's remarkable. I've only known Jacquelyn 3 years, although it's 3 years and a lifetime simultaneously. I can't imagine her putting herself first. I mean, I hear these stories about her childhood and striving, and she has so embodied that magnificent leadership quality of making sure that everybody around you is elevated and working to their highest and best possible self. That it's really impossible for me to even imagine. It's almost thinking like it was a completely different person at that time, that she has made such a radical shift and lives it really every day in every part of our work.
Thanks for that, Scott.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
It's remarkable.
Jacquelyn, I want to, I am a shrink, and I sometimes blend in observations. So I have an observation I want to check out with you as I was listening to you. And then Scott's going to think, oh, if he aims that at me, we're in trouble. But,
Yep, I'm already thinking of Mark.
And so 95% wasn't good enough for your dad. And when you approached people about friendship, your score wasn't 95%. It was like 60% or 50%.
Oh, yeah.
And so if 95% wasn't good enough and your dad appeared unforgiving or set a higher bar, I'm wondering if something shifted in you, like, geez, I'm not a 95% friend. I'm a terrible friend. Of course they're going to reject me. They're going to criticize me. And not only didn't they do it, it was the exact opposite. I mean, they accepted me. They forgave me. They actually wanted to be around me. I didn't even know what that was. And this is too important to ignore. So is any of that accurate?
Absolutely. You are completely correct, Mark, that in that moment, the metrics for success shifted permanently.
From what to what?
I think there was this great quote that I think sums it up so well. Wouldn't it be a shame to climb the ladder of success only to realize it was leaning against the wrong wall? And I think I was climbing this wall of personal achievement, that was somehow going to be my identity or where I saw fulfillment or value in myself. But really, I actually believe the quality of our lives is determined by the quality of the relationships we have. And that was the major shift, to say, I want to be someone who's rich in relationships. Even though those are messy, even though we're going to have shortcomings, it's about learning and growing.
So I want to,
and I think again, that's that idea of being coachable.
So again, this is conversational, so I hope it's okay that I gratuitously insert these things. On my podcast, I had a guest, Chip Conley.
I love Chip Connolly. I love his work.
Big fan.
And we've become friends because of the following thing that happened on the podcast. He said that he did Joie de Vivre hotels, then Airbnb. He was an advisor. And then he reached a point when 5 of his friends died by suicide. He had all the money in the world, and he was suicidal and depressed. And he realized he was addicted to achievement, and it was empty. It's a little bit what Marshall talks about, ambition versus aspiration. He had these ambitions, but once he reached it, it was empty. He wasn't aspiring. And so what happened is he pivoted to the Modern Elder Academy, to help people who may be dealing with similar things. And so something I suggested to him is, you might have the syndrome of disavowed yearning. And he said, what is that? I said, it may be that all of us, before we're born, we have an experience of being whole. And then when we're born, we want to continue the experience of being whole, but it wasn't to be had. So you convinced yourself you didn't need it, and you pivoted to achievement. So you disavowed needing it. And boy, that achievement, can go for 50 years, and it can work until it doesn't.
Right.
But it doesn't bring you the wholeness that actual emotional connection and closeness does. And And again, he says, he says, I'm still addicted to achievement. And then it dawned on him about 3 months later, and he wrote a blog about it on for the Modern Elder Academy Wisdom Well. And he said, I used to think that life was about learning, earning, and then returning, to the world stuff. And he said, I'm going to add to it now yearning. So I'm just sharing that with you, for your consideration. But and maybe there was a desire for wholeness that achievement wasn't getting you, and the fact that you were hurting other people subtracted from your wholeness. And gee, what's this about? And people seem intimidated by me, or they don't trust me. They don't open up to me. So anyway, just something FYI, and you can take it or leave it. So let's switch. So let's switch to you. Don't get so paranoid on me, Scott. You'll be okay.
I already saw the cautionary tale. So
when I take people out on a limb, I stay with them there. So
okay.
But some of the wake up calls for you that have led to becoming coachable, and talk to us.
Well, you don't know. I had a very fortunate life where I was, I grew up in a loving household, loved by all my grandparents, especially the grandfather I just spoke to, his wife, my grandmother, obviously, like adored me, and I was aware of it. I was not only aware of the feeling of being loved, I was aware of the gift that it was, and carried that with me my whole life, and really just always felt like, I had a blessed life. It's quite as simple as that, and saw everything through that lens. So didn't have a lot of wake-up calls because there's a story which, maybe another book someday. When I was 8, I had this, I had a vision too. I had a vision that I was going to have a life of extraordinary experiences. And then when I was 64, I would find out to what end. Like, why did I have all these experiences? What was I supposed to do with all that? And when I started 100 Coaches with Marshall back, in 2016, it was just kind of on a lark. I mean, he called me up. He said, we're going to do this thing. I said, great. And we did it with no real focus or intention. And then I'm around all these coaches. I didn't know anything about coaching at the time. And I met all these great coaches. And at some point along that journey, I thought, gee, maybe I should have a coach. And so I started talking with coaches, almost like a little child's book, will you be my coach? Will you be my coach? And, they're all generous people. And they're like, yeah, we'd love to. And inevitably, I would end up coaching them. Because I was learning a lot about coaching, and I'm a good sounding board, good listener. And I started thinking, gee, maybe I don't need a coach. Life is good. It seems like I'm doing everything right. And then I met a coach who said, if you don't know what you want to work on, let's just work on expansion. And for some reason, when he said that, it was a complete unlock for me. And the idea that whatever you think is good, whatever you think defines you, anything else, you can let go of all of that. Like anything that you think of that is even aspirational is a barrier to expansion. And as I started to think about that, I was working with Jacquelyn at the time. I realized that I didn't find the coach because I wasn't coachable. And I wasn't coachable. And this really, I think, became a lot of the inspiration for the book, which, Mark, we co-generated in those Wednesday calls. I remember for the first time when even the phrase "becoming coachable" came up. It came up during one of our weekly calls. But I think my real wake-up call was, what are the things that I'm not getting that made me not coachable? And the first thing was, I thought, and it was, I'm like, my life is good, right? I can't complain. I see my life in the perspective of any life that's ever existed. And I think I am incredibly fortunate and lucky. But the negative side of that was because of that, I wasn't as open to change as I needed to be, because I was so accepting of like what was. I didn't think I needed anything other than that, and that was limiting me in terms of what potential I could bring to the world. So the first thing was, the first wake up call was like, you got to be open to change. You got to be able to think expansively. You got to be able to think beyond. And I'm super creative, expansive thinker to begin with, but this was a whole other level. And then also just the way I heard people when they gave me feedback. I just heard it as an opinion, but didn't really fully understand it and accept it the way it was being given. So I think the second big wake up call for me was learning how to accept feedback in the right way. And then the other two things we talk about, being open to taking action on those things and then being held accountable, followed naturally from those first two wake up calls. But I think those were really the first big things for me. And they came, oddly enough, literally. So I mentioned that story, like when I was I had this vision, like I was going to have this amazing life, great experiences. And then when I was 64, I was going to find out. It happened when I turned 64, of all things. So that was my wake up call.
I don't know if you can relate to this, but again, I hope it's okay that this is conversational and
Of course,
you both trigger things for me. So I'm going through a vulnerable time in my life, pretty vulnerable, and I've always had trouble letting anyone care about me.
Mm.
I was the caretaker. I was the doctor. I was the therapist. If anyone wanted to, reciprocate, I'd say, no, just, I'm glad that you're doing well. I'm glad, even with people that I coach or mentor, no, this is all about you. And what's happened is through this vulnerability, when some people would say, how are you doing? Usually I would say, I'm fine. How about you? And focus on them. And I've started just telling them kind of what's going on. And I start to cry. And when I cry, I'm embarrassed. I'm appreciative. I feel some odd sense of relief. And what's happened, and you may find this even, knowing Marshall, when I pick up that someone's caring and I share this and I start to cry and I apologize, what's happened is they've said, don't apologize.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, why? And they say, it's an honor to care about you, Mark. And I'm still embarrassed. And they said, and then some of them will say, and in addition to that, this is the most intimate, emotional conversation I've had in months. And I would say 90% of the people, including hard to pin down Marshall, have said 24/7. And I said, what's 24/7? And even Marshall said it, you can call me 24/7. And these are people, and Marshall, you can't pin them down. And it looked like my condition, looks like I'm not going to die immediately. So I got a little time. And so I've reached out to people and say, hey, guess what? You can take back the 24/7. and everyone said, no, it still stands. I said, well, good, fine. But I'm just sharing that with you. I don't know if either of you can resonate with it, but that's been a real wake-up call for me that, and what I say humorously, I say, by the way, if you're watching this or listening to this, if you're a complainer, whiner, blamer, you've already used up all your caring chips. So this doesn't apply to you because people are already burned out caring about you. But I'm just sharing that because I'm not sure if you can relate to that, Scott, but it's a way of I can't really explain it, but there's something about just raw vulnerability. And I'll just share one other thing. Someone else who's a good friend who's on the spectrum. He was in Good to Great, one of the best CEOs of the, and we're friends. And and he asked me, and I shared it with him. And I don't know if you can picture this. So he's definitely on the spectrum, very decent on all kinds of boards. And his face kind of squinched up. And I could see him thinking, this is really important, but I don't get it. You know, when I was opening up to him, it's like he was trying to make it compute, you know,
Yeah.
and you know, he was shaking his head, not at me, but you know, it's like he was saying to himself, you know, this is important, don't ignore it. And he was also one of the 24/7 people, and he said, you know, in that spectrum, he said, Mark, no, this is good. This is good. Don't worry about it. You don't have to apologize. And I'm just sharing that because, you know, you might be able to relate to that in terms of the openness.
Yeah. Well, Jacquelyn is a massively natural empath. And I actually learn a lot watching her. I have similar kind of traits that you have, and have known for a long time that it's so much easier to care for other people than to be cared for.
Right.
And also known that you know, allowing people to care for you is a real gift to them. But it's difficult. And the way I kind of I like my own personal hack for it is I externalize it before I internalize it. Like it's just too much for me to like be that open, and maybe I'm a little on the spectrum also, but to just be that open. But if I sort of externalize it a little bit and say, I want to be the person that's open, and therefore I'm going to act like that person. And then once I'm open, I'm in the game and I'm fully open, fully embracing, fully present with the openness. But it's still, I totally get that that is a very, very hard thing to do. And yet one of the greatest gifts you can give anybody else. And you know, the other thing is, and I'm sure you know this as well as I do, we love the feeling of giving and being open to others. And we should want other people to have that same feeling that we have. And
Yeah.
I think that's what's driving the change for me.
Yeah,
Well, I'm watching Jacquelyn.
one person said to me, he said, I'm envious of you right now, Mark. I said, why? He said, I might get emotional. He said, because you feel safe enough to be this open, and I don't feel that level of safety. So here's the lightning round where we sell books.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what they say to me, the 100 coaches. You know, Mark, enough of this emo stuff. Let's get down to business.
I love it. You know, actually, I just want to say one last thing before we jump to selling. Your comment there reminded me of things that our good friend Srikumar Rao talks about. This idea that, you know, whether you feel safe or don't feel safe, I feel like we all have the power within ourselves to decide how we want to feel. Because like our feelings really, they're all driven by us. And the difference between your feeling safe or not feeling safe on some level was just both a choice, but also circumstances. And if we could find the circumstances to make the choice, preferably without being quite so dire, what a gift that would be.
Mm.
You know, but it's inside us.
You know, something I do in my coaching, and I'm partnering with Doug Guthrie on global leadership, and we have something called the Deeper Coaching Institute. And maybe this comes from my therapy background, but I bathe people in unwavering, non-judgmental, positive regard and belief in them. And I once told Warren Bennis, you know, I remember there was it was after his 80th birthday, and there was a tribute, and he was one of my mentors. And he leaned over to me and he said, you know, Mark, they made a big deal. You know, David Gergen was there, Howard Schultz, Tom Peters. And he said, normally I get embarrassed by it, but I really liked it. And I said, Warren, one of the things you don't realize about you is that the only thing that people feel more than respect for you is love. because within moments, people can trust you to never hurt them.
Mm.
And he looked at me and he scratched his chin. He said, Mark, a
Mhm.
lot of tributes. That's the third best thing I've heard. And I can't remember 1 and 2.
That's great.
Uh,
That's great. That's a beautiful thing to say about somebody.
Yeah.
but what I'm discovering is when you bathe people in this, what's happening, and this is part of the deeper coaching, is people are saying, I got a lot of hangups, and they start sharing them. And it's not usually things like they killed people or whatever, but there's quirky hangups that have been eating away at them their whole life. And they say, I guess I've paid it forward a little bit from Warren, is that they just feel so safe. And what's interesting is a lot of those hangups, when they air them, we actually reframe them into something to be proud of. And when they take something they were embarrassed about that they never told anybody and they're proud of, it's transforming. But getting back to the lightning round. So
Yes.
what I ask people with books is share a couple nuggets that are counterintuitive, that our listeners and maybe viewers will say, I never would have thought of that ever, and that is relevant to my life. So becoming coachable is really geared towards, people who need the coaching and, don't quite know why they're resisting it or how to become it. But if you can each give us a couple of those nuggets where people will say, I never thought of it that way. And now I understand why coaching can help me.
Right. Absolutely. I think one of the first things that comes to mind for me as we were writing this book, we realized all of these qualities that make someone coachable are also qualities that we would use to describe a great leader, especially in today's day and age, right? You have to be open to change, open to feedback, open to taking action, and open to being held accountable. And while those are the 4 dimensions we identify of coachability, if a leader displays those qualities, wouldn't you say this is a really talented person, a really talented leader, someone I want to follow?
I build on that. Not only is it a great leader, but a great human being. The qualities of being coachable are the qualities that make you a better person in all the relationships in your life. And I think that was the other great revelation. We actually wrote what we thought was the whole book, which is now 2/3 of the book. And we kind of sat back and we said, this is good. And then we read it again and we said, it's incomplete. Because what we realized is we had helped people understand like what is coaching, and we had to understand how to become coachable, but we didn't help them understand to what end. Like, why go through this? What's the importance of it? And it really gave us a chance to tap into our purpose and why we're doing the work we're doing, which is becoming a better leader through becoming coachable, and becoming a better human being by being a better leader and through coaching. The reason we think everybody can, should, and will be doing it is because we all want to create what we call human flourishing, which is having a positive impact on all the people in our life, all the people that we lead, the people that we love, and making their lives better. And by becoming coachable, that's really the end result. And we've been watching it now as we've been developing the 100 Coaches Agency, and just watching the transformative change of the people around us as they become coachable, and then they impact the lives around them. How I became coachable and impact more of the lives of the people around me.
Yeah.
So to those cynics and skeptics out there, and there's more than a few, this is a tough sell. If you can imagine them approaching, some of our most admired leaders, Hubert Joly, Alan Mulally, and and the list goes on. If you can imagine them, the cynic who really needs coaching, approaching one of those people and saying, well, doesn't coaching mean that there's something wrong with you or there's something missing in you? I mean, how can you say you needed coaching and you benefited from it? And, doesn't it mean, something negative, how would you imagine an avatar of
Uh-huh.
best leaders who are all coachable responding to that cynic or skeptic besides you're fired?
Yeah. Well, it kind of goes back to like what my realization was about becoming coachable and why I wasn't coachable and then became coachable. Um, to the person who says, I don't need coaching because I'm perfect, right? Which is kind of what you're saying. Like, if there, I don't need coaching, there's nothing wrong with me. Marshall actually has a great answer, which is to say we could always work on humility,
Right?
right?
Pick one thing.
If you want to pick one thing, let's go.
And if you can't think of something, choose humility.
Right. But the real answer is this: is no matter how successful, no matter how perfect you think you are, there's always more. And the great thing that a coach can do for you that you can never do for yourself is to show you the blind spots. To see, I mean, literally, it's kind of a tautology. Your coach will help you see the things that you can't see. And if you think you can see everything 360 around you, if you think that everybody is giving you pure and honest feedback, then I think you're just deluding yourself. That's never the case. And a great coach, I mean, our experience, we've now worked with hundreds of engagements, all of them successful. And in fairness, look, we're working with some of the best coaches in the world, and we're working with some of the best leaders in the world. But to a relationship, people get better, and they're more successful, and they have happier lives, and they set higher goals. And I would argue with the person who says, I don't need coaching. Is your life as happy as you think it could be? Are your goals as big as you can not even imagine? And are you impacting people around you to the extent that you think is possible? And if any of those things can be worked on, then I would say a coach could really be helpful.
That's great. And Jacquelyn, you would add to that?
I think the only thing I would add is this analogy of, we don't see our own faces. We can never see our own reflections or see ourselves. We only see reflections. And so really we need the reflections of other people around us to get better. That is part of the nature of leadership. It's John Maxwell saying, a leader without followers is just a man taking a walk, right? So we need to have the people around us, especially the people that follow us. We need their constant feedback and input. That is just the nature of leadership and being the type of leader that they need us to be. And so when someone says from time to time, we hear, I think I'm very self-aware. And, that's a funny statement to me because it's like when someone says, oh, I think I have lots of fun facts. It's like, well, you should probably let someone else tell you that they're fun facts. And the same way is with self-awareness. We only become self-aware through the reflections and feedback of other people. And a coach is chief among them. They're often the person that is closest to a person in their life. They have no agenda. They don't want anything from you. They aren't trying to get a promotion at work or get more money or get more recognition or anything like that. The only thing that a coach wants is for you to be the absolute best version of yourself that you possibly can be. They only want the best for you. And if you don't think that that can be a useful relationship in your life, I guess that might be true for some people, but I have to say, I think for vast, vast majority of people, we could all use someone like that in our life and in our corner.
And I think we wrote Becoming Coachable to be a bridge to that kind of relationship. It's a very, oddly, we looked around, nobody had written the book before, how to become coachable, how to be the best coachee that you can be. And really, as we all know, like the most important person in the coach-coachee relationship is not the coach, it's the person who's being coached. They're going to do all the work. The coach is going to help them get there. And becoming coachable helps sort of open the door to coaching, but also to showing up as the right kind of person to get the most from coaching.
So are the two of you coachable if I give you a pitch on how to pitch it?
Please.
Absolutely.
So something I've had to do with listening. Listening is one of those things where people say, oh, yeah, I need to be a better listener, and then they don't do it. So I've had to create the pincer effect where they self-discover they need it. And without doing the analogy, I'll just go directly and apply it to coaching. So I'm thinking about, someone who's questioning this, and I'd say, I'd like you to think of someone who in your mind's eye thinks the world of you, believes in you, has your back. And imagine in your mind's eye saying to them, what would be the positive effect on me in my success, my happiness, and your regard for me if I got coaching? Small, medium, large. And most people will say, oh, yeah, I think they'd say medium. And the pincer effect is, now hold on to that person who wants the best and say, ask them, what has already been the costly negative effect on my success, my happiness, and our relationship when I have been at my worst at something that could have been fixed by coaching?
Wow.
And they're going to go, oh,
Yeah.
they're going to get a flashback. And that's what I do with, a good listening versus what's been the negative effect when you've been your worst as a listener. And they get flashbacks. So I interrupted people. I was sarcastic. I talked down to them. But it's a pincer effect of taking something where they get a flashback of all these things that could have been preventable had they been coached. And does that make any sense to you? It gives you something to,
absolutely.
And then you build on that. We'll talk about that thing that might have been preventable by coaching.
Well, what you're really saying is there's a value to taking action. In this case, getting coaching, becoming coachable. But there's also a cost to inaction, and I think that's often what people forget, is that there is a cost to inaction. Inaction is a decision.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really great. Thank you, Mark.
Oh, well, I hope it was helpful. So, so tell us where people can find out about 100 Coaches Agency, about the book, which is recently out, and about the two of you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the book you can find at becomingcoachable.com. All the information you want about the book is there. Of course, it's on Amazon for pre-sale. Launches September 19th. And you can find out about the agency at either www.100coaches.com, 100coaches.com, or if you want to go direct to the agency.100coaches.com. And probably everything you need to know about us are there also.
Yeah, feel free to add us on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
If anyone I'm happy to connect with anyone. If anyone just shoots me a message and says they listen to this podcast, add me, let's connect.
We had, Mark, we had an epiphany about a year ago. We were kind of at that stage of a company where we were growing pretty fast, and we felt we needed to be more efficient. And as we tried to be more efficient, we felt that it was just totally different than who we want to show up as and who we want to be as a company. And so we made a complete pivot, and we decided we were going to be a relationship first company. And what that meant to us was we're going to put relationships ahead of transactions. And so we yearn for relationships and to be in relationship with people. And we invest a lot in understanding who people are, a lot of listening, and really hoping to help as many people as we can become coachable, and then find the coach they need, and then contribute to human flourishing. I mean, that's our business plan in a nutshell.
So thank you both for being on. And I'm going to put you on the spot for a second, Scott, because I know you like to wiggle away from it. Would you be able to handle it if Jacquelyn and I and many of the 100 coaches were to tell you that we care about you?
Yes, I think I could handle that.
Yeah, Jacquelyn's smiling with, oh, that's a good one.
Jacquelyn says that
every day.
She says that.
Oh, that is good. Oh, okay. So there you go.
But I hear you, Mark. It's uncomfortable. It's a work in progress.
Oh, good. Well, let it in. Please let it in.
I appreciate that.
Don't wait till your back's against the wall to let it in.
Thank you.
You built something really amazing.
It's it takes a whole community to build what we're building. I feel very fortunate.
And Jacquelyn is looking at you with total admiration and appreciation. So just let it sink in, Scott.
Okay. Thank you, Mark.
Okay. Our therapy session is over. So thank you for being on and thank you for listening in. And please do check out Becoming Coachable. It really is a game changer. You know, it may seem like, well, hasn't this book been written before? No, it hasn't. And I think it's a good book to find out and ask yourself if you're coachable and whether you'd benefit from it. And if you're not coachable, how come? Furthermore, you should ask the people who care about you, is this something that you think I could benefit from in our relationship if I got coached on it? That in itself will open it. So thank you all. And when wake up calls come your way, there'll be another bus as wake up calls. You don't have to take the first one, but get on one of them. Okay. So
Absolutely.
take care, everyone.